Thank you so much to everyone that is logged on, especially our students. We really, really appreciate. We are just going to begin in a few minutes. And Anne, take it away.
Good. Thank you, Margaret. Well, again, welcome to everyone. We're so pleased to have you as part of this second session of the Academic Resilience Series for spring of 2022. If you're a frequent visitor, you know that we've been doing this now for several semesters and have had such wonderful feedback from our faculty as well as from our students. And so we're pleased to continue this semester with student panels of our graduates, primarily from the master's and doctoral programs in education leadership, social work, and then nursing practice. And then later this semester, we'll hear from some of our undergraduate seniors with some tips. But today's panelists are social workers, and we are so pleased to have them as graduates of social work at Millersville. Some of them have a bachelor's from Millersville, some have a master's, some have a doctorate, some have multiple degrees. And we're really glad to have you back as alumni and leaders to discuss resilience, endurance, and the whole person self-care. So our panelists today are Dr. Karen Hinton-Polite from KEP Consulting, Miss Kayla Torres, who is a licensed social worker and has a master's in social work and works for the Penn Manor School District. Ryon Freeman, who also has a master's in social work and is a house parent at the Milton Hershey School, and Dr. Amy Sagen from the National Association of Social Workers in Pennsylvania. And here to lead all of us in this great conversation, we'd like to introduce Dr. Berta DeJesus, who's an assistant professor and co-program director of the doctoral program in the School of Social Work. So without further ado, Dr. DeJesus, if you would take it away.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming today to our panel discussion. As it was stated, we are here to talk about adjusting to changes and resilience. What does that look like? Endurance, as well as looking at the whole person in a time of change. So Dr. Ann was indicating this morning that she introduced our panelists, but I would like them to just share a little bit about themselves and, the alumni that they are, from what program that they graduate from. And then we have a list of questions that we're going to be asking each. So who would like to go first into introducing themselves?
I'll introduce myself.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Karen Polite. I'm the owner of KEP Consulting, where I do life coaching, consulting, counseling, and also motivational, inspirational speaking. I'm Professor Emeriti from Harrisburg Area Community College. I retired from full-time teaching at HAC in 2019. Sometimes I get the dates a little bit confused because I lose time with the pandemic, but I think it was 2019 it was. I retired from full-time teaching. I'm now teaching part-time in the DSW program for Simmons University. I'm an alumni ×2. From Millersville University. I got my BSW a long time ago, 1995. And I am proud to say that I'm a part of the inaugural class, the first graduating doctorate in social work program, 2018. And lastly, I consider myself a child of God. And that's my introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Polite, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm just going to do like a little popcorn here of looking at my screen. Would Kayla like to introduce herself?
Sure. I want to thank you, Berta, for this opportunity. My name is Keila Torres. I am a home and school visitor, licensed school social worker or bilingual school social worker at Penn Manor School District. This is my third year here at the school. I graduated from Millersville, my undergrad in 2012. Then came back to get my master's degree. I believe it was 2019. So I've been a social worker for a few years, maybe a decade. Well, it feels like it sometimes, but I have my first job in social work was I worked for TW Panessa as a therapeutic support staff. I then worked at the Lancaster Lebanon IU13 in their Teen Elect program, where I worked with teens, pregnant teens in transition. And then I out of my master's degree from Millersville, I was able to obtain this position here at Penn Manor, and I've been here ever since. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla, for that wonderful introduction and also sharing about your background. How about Dr. Amy Sagen?
Good afternoon. My name is Amy. I'm fine with Amy. That's great. I work at the National Association of Social Workers, and I'm coming up on my 15th year anniversary there. So I've been in macro social work most of my professional career, having come from skilled nursing, dementia units, Alzheimer's Association, as I'm also a gerontologist by my master's training. So that holds a dear place in my heart, is the Alzheimer's and dementia aspect of it. So otherwise, I am late to the Millersville alumni game. I did not come to Millersville until my doctorate and was in the inaugural class with Dr. DeJesus and Dr. Hinton-Polite. So it's good to see you guys again. Otherwise, just to introduce myself is life is not all about work. So I'm a parent. I have children. I have, a partner. I enjoy doing triathlons and things like that, which as we go through the endurance and the resilience aspect of it, really come into play as to who I am. So just know that there are things outside of work, and work is important. I understand that, and we're doing great jobs, but there's other things outside that will build and bring you compassion, satisfaction to really kind of counter any of the burnout or the compassion fatigue that you're feeling. So I'm really excited and honored that I am speaking with you guys today. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sagan, for sharing that latter part of your introduction. That's so important when we think about, adjusting to change, because yes, thinking about the whole person is not about all work, but also our personal side of who we are. But last but not least, Mr. Ryon Freeman.
Wow, I feel like I'm about to run out on the field or something. My name is Ryon Freeman. I had the great opportunity to do my undergraduate at Millersville, and also my graduate, my MSW at Millersville University. I had the opportunity to serve as in multiple facets at Millersville for a time. And so in academic advisement, and then I headed over recently to Milton Hershey School. To work with students as a house parent. So glad to be with you guys today and looking forward to having this great conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourselves, panel. This is a topic that's so important because we are in a world that's constantly changing. It's not stopping, it's constantly changing. So we really have to look at how we can be resilient, how we can endure, and also keep ourselves whole as a person. So with that in mind, I wanted the panelists to actually share and maybe just define what resilience and endurance means to them. As we, continue this discussion this morning, I wanted just to start out there. So who would want to share about what it means to them to be resilient and just show endurance as a whole person?
I can start if everyone. Yeah. So when I think of resilience, initially I think of what's my relationship with failure, right? What's my relationship with failure? How do I process failure? How do I understand failure? And have I been able to leverage failure in my life, right? In the proper way, with the right mindset, to really reach my goals. And so when I think about maybe some of us and how we've grown up with the idea of failure and how it's been integrated in our lives, a lot of times failure is often seen as a reason to stop, right? A reason to quit. And so a lot of times our failures in our life bring us to the conclusion that it's time to quit. But ultimately, I think as we mature and as we realize the benefit of failure, because failure speaks to an individual who's willing to take risks. And so if I'm an individual that's willing to take risks, part of taking risks is understanding that part of that risk is going to lead to failure. And so in my life, I've realized, and through my experience as an undergrad and a graduate, the more I'm willing to risk and the more I'm willing to undertake, I'm going to have to understand that there's going to be failure that's part of that. And so, and resilience is coming into a place and coming into self to realize it's not if I fall, it's when I fall. And when I fall, what is it going to look like for me to rebound? When I fall, what is it going to look like to lean on supports? When I fall, what is it going to look like for me to actually get up and take the next step? And so initially, when I think about resilience, I grab hold of okay, at this season of my life, what's my relationship or my understanding of failure?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else in the panel? I would like everybody to try to share something in your thoughts about how you would describe that. Dr. Hinton-Polite?
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for reframing failure. Never thought of resilience as that way, but I love that. I love that. When I think about resilience, I looked at the definition of resilience and then the words that come to mind as it relates to resilience. So a couple of words come to mind is being strong, tenacious, feisty, difficult to keep down, quick to bounce back, determined, a person who can roll with the punches, being unstoppable, being able to withstand, whatever comes, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about how that connects to endurance as I think you're going to look at endurance as well. But it's that grit, it's that toughness. It's like, no matter what, is being able to move through difficulties and accept those difficulties that definitely will come, right? And so there's an acceptance piece that's connected to resilience in my mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sagan?
Yeah, I think I kind of go more towards what Ryan was saying, but I don't take failure as far as failure. I say what happens when you stumble, because resilience can be anything from minor mishaps. And how I teach it and how I look at it is what happens when you stumble. Do you lay on the ground and have a temper tantrum and blame everyone else and say, I can't do this, and you don't have any control or power over it? Or do you say, okay, that was hard. I messed up, something messed up. It didn't go the way I wanted. But now I have time to reflect on it, to look at it, to kind of see, okay, are some of the things in my control that maybe I wasn't prepared for a meeting, or were they out of my control that there was 10 inches of rain and a flood and I couldn't get there? So to me, resilience is really, what do you do as a next step? We ask our clients to be resilient because we are changing their lives. We are changing their thoughts. We are changing so many things for them. And we're asking them to be resilient. So it's really asking us, who are we and what can we do? So again, I think resilience is one of the more important things that we have in our profession, because it really helps us to say, okay, when something happens that we don't expect, whether it's a stumble, whether it's a fall, whether it's a whole collapse of something, how do we react? How do we respond? How do we continue to drive and move forward with what we're trying to do?
Thank you so much. Ms. Torres.
So one of the big things that came out from resiliency and endurance for me is the trying to recover, whether like Dr. Sagen said, like little stumbles, or whether it's a failure. but try finding a way to recover from any instance. I always think about the palm tree. And that's a good analogy when like the palm tree is a really strong tree and it's bendable. It goes through different things. Waves catch it, the rain, storm, wind, but it still maintains intact. So when I think about endurance and how that goes with resiliency, we talk about the way to withstand something, whether that's pain, adversity, oppression, and how can we surpass the fatigue that we feel as we begin our careers as social workers or as students. How can we withstand those adverse conditions, whether that's systemic racism, whether that's homelessness, those things that students face, food insecurity, trying to be like that palm tree. Yes, things are going to hit us. Yes, we're going to stumble. Yes, we're going to have failures. But if we maintain ourselves and withstand like a palm tree, then even though things are getting thrown at us, we're still going to maintain resiliency. And so when I talk to our students here at the high school, it's one of the big things, like how, when all these things are going wrong, what can I do to recover? What can I do to help myself see a positive out of the negative? And so trying to stand like a palm tree, even when things are coming, even when you bend and things go bad, yes, you're going to find something positive in the end so you can stand back up again.
Excellent. And it's all about being still and standing upright in whatever is occurring in your life, right? And not running away from it, but, facing it, and figuring out easy ways of getting through. So with that in mind, we have in our audience students, and remember, we're in that pandemic and everything is constantly changing and coming at us, day to day, from day to day, and it never stops. And changes are always constantly going. And with that, it really weighs in on us. And we have to think about us as a whole person. With our audience in mind, what can you share based on your experiences as a student, if you can remember, and resiliency and endurance and just being a whole person and taking care of yourself as a student, because our students are going through a lot right now. I wanted us to share a little bit about who we are and what we know, a little bit about our understanding about endurance and being resilient as a student. Who wants to share?
So when I was in college, my undergrad was a little bit more difficult than I feel like when you're first in college and things sometimes don't turn out well. I didn't start out in social work to begin with. Many people might have that story. So I was in nursing school and that wasn't what I wanted to do. I still wanted to bring out a positive change, but that avenue wasn't for me. So when I came to Millersville to do social work, in order to catch up, I had to do a lot of courses. And so it became very stressful very quickly when you're trying to do 21 credits at a time. So I always look at things as trying to have a positive outlook, having an end goal and seeing what do I need to do to meet that end goal and what could I do in between to provide self-care so that I have a way to get to the goal. But when things get stressful, what can I do to just set something down and find something more positive that I can do. A lot of my stuff was in exercise. I love to bike and run. So those are the types of things that help me to relieve some of the stress that sometimes I may be going through. And so setting goals, moving towards those goals, crossing things off lists helps me to feel a little bit more accomplished. Accepting change, knowing that change is a part of life and things are going to change constantly. And even when there's failures, even within your college career, whether that's in your bachelor's or your master's, finding a way to help to know that change is normal and then taking action and being decisive about what you want to do and how you're going to do it. Obviously, we're all social workers, so we talk about our SMART goals and making SMART goals and how can we do that. But also when you put into practice how to be resilient, finding those moments in your life where you can go out in the community and do stuff that seems fulfilling to you, so that yes, you're doing school things, but you can find things that you like from a personal level, where that's hanging out with your family, hanging out with your animals, being with people you love that can support you. Having a positive support system can help you to put into practice everything that you need to accomplish. So then when you get back to that stuff that is a little bit more difficult, you feel a little bit more energized and you feel a little bit more supported that you could get those things accomplished more.
Thank you so much, Kayla, for sharing with us, just looking outside of the academic side of things, because we've been on Zoom all the time, and change it comes as a challenge. What would you say, Dr. Sagan, to that?
Sure. Resilience and endurance in a school setting. I'm a field instructor as well for Millersville, so I have a lot of your students. And what I talk to them about, just moving on what Kayla has, she has lots of things that I said, so I'm not going to repeat what she was saying, but it's also finding a mentor, finding a group of people that you can have a conversation with, an honest conversation, not just an acquaintance saying, oh yeah, you're right, but having the deeper conversations, because we are in a time of change. We are in a time of struggle and pressures and things like that. So finding a mentor, whether it's a professor, whether it's a field supervisor, whether it's someone in the field that you have networked with, and just having conversations. Because as with Kayla, I didn't start in social work. I started I wanted to be an oncologist. And you know what? That just wasn't my road, and that's okay. But it's through the conversations that I had to really figure out, what do I want? So having that connection, whether it's a mentor, a mentorship connection, can help guide. I personally have about 5 mentors that help me in different parts of my life. Some are, helping me advance my career. Some are helping me understand my current stuff. Some are helping me move this way and that way. So, and that's okay. But I guess my biggest thing would be the endurance is, withstanding the wear and tear, knowing that your mentors can be personal. They can be a physical trainer. They can be someone who is helping you nutrition-wise or sleep better, things like that. But knowing that you as a whole person are a whole person. We can't just cut off part of our bodies, and we can't leave stuff at the door, because we are the instruments of our profession. We are the ones that are listening. We are the ones hearing. We are the ones interacting with the person. I tell them, I don't have a stethoscope. I don't have a wrench. I don't have a hammer, and my wand is broken. So it needs to be me. And just coming from NASW and working the ethics side of it, but I know you're not getting ethics credits for this. Working the ethics side of it is the competency. If you are sleep deprived and you are not you, and you are not working in the capacity of 100%, then you are denying your clients their interaction. So just knowing that you are important, making sure that you don't put yourself last on the list. In the airport, now on the airplane, it says, put your face mask on and then help someone else. So please just make sure that as you go through this, start a compassion journal of things that went well. So you can always look back when you're going through a little bit of a difficult time or a stumble or a fall of, okay, things are going, this one thing didn't work. I'm really upset about it, but other things have. And it kind of allows you, for lack of a better pun, of getting back on the horse again, of just getting up when you fall down. So I guess my biggest thing to you guys would be, find a mentor, find someone you can talk to. Again, field supervisors are a great point for that. People in the field, if you've networked, if you've gone into the field and are, testing out different areas, but just use them as a resource and ask them how they've dealt with things, because they can give you a different perspective. So just again, mentors and communicate, ask and talk, be free and willing to ask and talk in an honest manner.
Thank you so much. That is so, so, so important. How about you, Dr. Hinton-Polite? What would you add to that? All these points are important, students, and we have students in the audience from all different disciplines. So this is good to add. What would you add to that, Dr. Hinton-Polite?
Wow, definitely what has already been said about connections, connectedness, and relationships. I can't emphasize that enough. I think about when I was going through the DSW program, and when I think about relationships, my relationship with God, my relationship with myself, and my relationship with others comes to mind. And relationships with myself in terms of, taking care of myself, right? And so the physical self-care, I had 12-step program that was of support to me, that helped me to take care of, my eating. And in terms of my relationship with God, it was essential that I had God time. I had to have God time in order to be able to do the work, right? Doctoral work, to do doctoral work. So that meant getting up early, time reading spiritual, things, whether it's the Bible or some other spiritual reading, sitting quietly, meditating on what I read. Journaling is a big thing for me. So sometimes I write Dear God letters when I'm praying to God. And then relationships with others. And you guys have talked about relationships. And Dr. Berta DeJesus and I forged a sisterhood bond during our doctoral work that will never be broken, right? And so there's a need to have one or two people that are your ride or die, so to speak, that you can cry with, that you can laugh with, that you can be transparent and tell them anything, and that they still love you and support you, but will also tell you what you need to know, right? Or what you need to hear. So relationships with others are absolutely key, as well as relationship with myself. And then ultimately my relationship with God is how I got through doctoral work. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that spiritual piece, because sometimes, whether it's, with God or a creator or just some other spiritual entity, is also important to have. Mr. Freeman, what would you add to this discussion that we're having about how to take care of yourself and having resilience, showing resilience and endurance?
I think I'm gonna speak to the community aspect, but I want to kind of flip it. I want to look at it. When I think of community and relationships, I have a story from undergrad, but before I get to it, I think it's important for us to realize what I like to call our bar setters, right? And so we have bar setters in our life, right? And some of us have bar setters, and our experience with bar setters early on might have been a negative one, right? So we might have had a teacher who set a bar low, right? And said we couldn't achieve, so we tripped over it, became a stumbling block. And so that bar is called our academics. And because that bar setter set that so low for us, we trip over it constantly. So we always come up against a hurdle of what I can't do, and right in regards to our academics. But then we might have someone set a bar, and it's another one. It's someone who sets the bar high, right? And so these people come into our lives and they set the bar high, and we look at it and we look at them and we say, that's impossible. But what it does is it instills in us a dream. It gives us a sense of aspiration, something to look up to, something to look forward to. And so we look towards that bar and we start to reach for it. And so what we realize is that the first bar, the person who set the bar low, we realize what we used to trip over, we no longer trip over, because another bar has been set so high that now we're stepping over that first bar, right? And so we try to obtain that bar that was set high. And so throughout my experience, right, and how I believe God had put people through my journey who chose to set high bars for me, right? And because they seem so lofty, they seem so unreachable. It seemed impossible. I said, there's no way, but they not only set the bar, they came alongside me and showed me how I could reach it. And so through trial and error, through failure, I just bring up failure because it's my story. I'm not scared of failure anymore. I used to be scared of it. I used to not be able to say it, but now I can say it because I understand what it is. So through failure, through missing the bar, they taught me how I could grab hold to that bar. And so what happened is when I grabbed onto it, I gained some confidence, and then I was able to pull myself up to it. And then once I pulled myself up to it, I was able to pull myself over. And what happened was I had reached a level of success where I looked around and I said, well, why is it so few of us, right? And so if you're an individual of color and you go through undergrad and you go through graduate, you'll get to the top of the bar and you'll be like, where's everyone else? And so what we realize is that a lot of us get stuck, right, at times on that low bar that was set. And so we have to obtain. No matter what, you have to reach that high bar. And so when I'm part of something like this, what you see in front of you is a lot of people who have reached high bars because they had high bar setters in their life, right? And so quick story, I'm an undergraduate and I'll never forget this. And I think we have these moments, and I encourage you to be somebody like this in their life, right? So I was in a classroom and I had one professor at Millersville. And this person knows who they are, right? And so I had one professor at Millersville, and at the end of the class, towards the end of the class, she looked at me, right? And I'm just an undergrad trying to play football, but she looked at me and she said, "You're smart." And I looked behind me. I'm like, who is she talking to? And she said, "No, you're smart, and you're going to go ahead and get your master's." And I'm like, I'm just trying to get through this class, lady. Like, that's what I'm thinking, right? And so, but she said, "You're going to go ahead and get your master's degree." And she told me that as a sophomore in college, and I never forgot it. And so I kind of moved on through my life. And one day I was walking down the hallway and she was with her two kids. And she said, hold on. And she grabbed the kid. She's like, "This is Ryon Freeman. He's in my class and he's smart. And he's going to go ahead and get that master's." And she told her kids that. And I realized she had just handed me, guess what, a bar. And I realized that her two kids, she was setting the expectation for her two kids of what a young man, a Black man could achieve and what he could do. And so she was trying to teach them something by handing me that bar. And so when I think about this conversation, I think about my time at Millersville, it was the relationships. It was the moments where the professors took time to show me themselves outside of the lecture that inspired me and made me believe what they were teaching me in the lecture.
Thank you. That's that was powerful, Mr. Freeman. That was powerful. Ms. Hinton-Polite, you had your wanted to share.
Yes, I just want to share one more thing. Bar setters. Oh my goodness, powerful, Ryan. And I just would be remiss if I didn't identify the bar setter for me in my doctoral program was Dr. Rita Smith-Waddell. God rest her soul. Is that we went to see her about our research course, and she set the bar high, and the way in which she did it was in love, but it was tough love. And it was exactly what I needed. It was that tough love. It was that kind of other mothering love. And so I would be remiss if I did not mention Rita Smith-Waddell. And as Ryan said, is having those bar setters. And I think Amy referred to them as mentors, if you will. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there anybody else want to share about those bar setters? Because I think it's important as for students and even faculty to hear staff that, we tend to be those individuals of influence and inspiration to our students, and, to have the bar raised so high and give that tough love like Rita Waddell did. She had a strong hand, but she did it in love. So is there anybody else on the panel that would like to share an experience that they had? Dr. Sagan, yes.
It's not really an experience, but it's just kind of more of a hope for people. How I adjunct as well. And what I try to do is do servant leadership. So just understanding and asking the students what's going on, doing what we do with our clients, taking a pulse of the room. I asked mine this morning and they all have a hour presentation tonight. So they were fried. And so for me, it wasn't a discouragement. It was just more of a, okay, now I understand and I can slightly modify what I'm doing, but just being available. So if you're talking to staff and faculty and field supervisors, of being available and open. So it means you're always being present with the person. So what Ryan said is the professor was present, was aware and acknowledged, right? So it's just having that, and being a bar setter, being a mentor, whatever you want to call them, is having those people in your life, but being vulnerable enough to talk with them about difficult things, being vulnerable enough to say, I'm struggling, right? Because they can give guidance, they can give support. And sometimes it's tough love we need, and sometimes it's soft love we need. Sometimes it's, okay, well, we had this deadline, we got to get there, or it's, okay, well, let's take a step back and figure it out. So the panel, and I agree with you, it's the relationships, it's those small moments. And please know that sometimes as a student, it was the small moments that the staff weren't intending to teach, but kind of was in the hallway or in passing, or just those encouraging words of, okay, that didn't go as well as you thought. So, okay, let's do this. I know you can do this. So just keep encouraging, and students, encourage one another. You guys are in class with each other. You see things that are going really well. You see students that are struggling or are becoming vulnerable and opening up because maybe they have a different opinion or a different view or a different history, a different background. But just acknowledging that strength will go a long way to help someone else to continue their journey. As a field instructor, I believe that I'm on your journey. I'm on the student's journey. I've already done my internship. I've done my schooling, unless I want to go back for more. I've done that. So I'm here for you. So please utilize the people in your academic and in your career and in your networking and in your personal life to help you on your journey. Okay, so I'll just stop there. But yeah, it's a journey. Just be with one another.
Thank you, Amy. Dr. Sagan, thank you. Now, Kayla, do you have an experience that you can share with us just so, to enrich this conversation? Because we have some powerful information here, students, faculty, and staff, that we can really take home and put it into practice. Miss Kayla.
So I laugh when now thinking about an experience, because I always think about, I was very introverted. I always stay to myself. So I remember a time in my undergrad, and I always thank him for this, and he probably doesn't even remember, but Dr. DJ, we all had like our elevator talks, and most people who were in the social work program would know about that. So when we were graduating was the last class. I go, and to be honest, I had a lot of things going on that week. And I was taking 21 credits. I'm like, I just need to graduate. And it was a struggle for me. And I remember we had one last elevator talk, and it was like the last day. And I go up, and everybody's giving their speeches, and I go up and give mine, and it wasn't good at all. But I was just like, I just need to get through it and just try my best. So I sit down, and he calls everyone. And then at the end, he says, at that time I was the Jesus. And he says, Mr. Jesus, I don't think you're done. And I said, oh God, here we go. And he's like, your grade is this. If you're not going to go back up there and do this again, he's like, that it was not to your caliber. And I was like, oh my gosh. But he was holding me accountable. And many people would take that as like an embarrassment, like, oh my gosh, like he just called me out there in front of everybody. But like Ryan said, he was setting the bar for me. Like, this isn't your work. Your work's up here. I want you to show me up here. And so he said, take 10 minutes, recover. Resiliency, recovering. And he said, take it, recover, and then come back and do this again. So I was like, I had my best friend, who's still my best friend till this day. And I looked at her and like, what am I going to do? She's like, nope, just take it, do it. You got this. So like I started writing again, and everything is through memorization. So I went up there again and I did it. And then everybody left after that. And he said, you see, he said, this is your work. Like, this is the social worker you're going to be. And so he was setting that to tell me, like, no, you're going to be great. You need to be great. And so that is not where you need to be. You need to be up here. And so my grade got switched and it all turned out great. But I took that moment, and I still take it, like, when I'm doing my work and I'm teaching children and I'm talking to them and I'm saying to them, you're better than what you're giving. You could be up here. Yes, you're going through things. Yes, but this is the bar that we want you to be at. And so I always take that experience, and I don't even know if he ever remembers that, but I'll always remember that experience as, wow, like, he held me accountable to a higher standard, and I respect that.
Excellent. So we hear accountability. We hear, mentoring. We hear, supporters. We've heard, bar setters, strong hand, a strong arm type of bar setter, and the soft ones, and before we close and bring it to an end, before we take questions, panelists, what guide or advice would you give our audience today when we think about adjusting to changes? Because the pandemic, we're living in it. It's going to be here for another 2 minutes. And I just say 2 minutes because it can be, whatever we want it to be. But we have, in the name of resilience and endurance and maintaining us hope, what advice and guidance would you give our students, our faculty, and our staff?
I can go quick. So some guidance I would give to students is basically what everybody else says, but like get some numbers of some teachers that, like, throughout your career, like, I text Bertha all the time. So it's just like, we still have that communication. Dr. Frank is somebody that I communicate with as well. We're on some nonprofits together inside the Penn Manor community. So, like, finding those connections and relationships that will guide you in your, not only in the now, but in the future. Because the now is great because it helps you to get to a goal, but you're going to have more goals after this, after college, after your graduate degree, whatever you decide to do in the future. And it's good to have those connections where you could say, hey, Dr. Saldana, hey, I'm doing this. What do you think? To get that advice so that those mentors continue on. And so something that I've learned is having those people that you can surround yourself with that were a part of the Millersville community. I still go back every year and speak to the beginning classes at Millersville with Dr. Frank, and she invites us to go talk about different avenues of social work that we're in. And so it's great to be able to see up and coming, but having those connections, without that, I wouldn't have had those opportunities. So making sure we're keeping that connection and just finding a way. My next thing would be finding a way to just provide yourself some self-care. Whatever that case may be, besides the relationships, finding what works for you to just find some downtime for yourself, whether that's alone or with family. I reiterate that because that's helped me in my career. Sometimes we're in stressful situations and we're going through hardships, adverse situations. Sometimes finding a job right out of college seems to be one of the big things, but knowing that things will get better and that you need to find things that fulfill your life besides work.
Dr. Sagan, would you add any advice or anything to staff, students, and faculty before we take questions?
Sure. The one thing I would say to students is take a risk. And risk, I don't mean risky behaviors, but more so if you're interested in looking at a certain topic, take a risk and do a paper on it. If you're not sure if you want an internship or a job or a career in one area of social work or one area of, what your profession is, see if you can do some volunteer work. So kind of put your toes into different things. That's the biggest thing that helped me try to figure out who I was. Because I don't know, I'm still struggling to figure out what do I want to do with my life when I grow up. So it doesn't stop when you get out of school. At least it didn't for me. So I won't project that onto you. For me, it didn't stop. So it was what do I want to do? So having the opportunities to volunteer, to kind of get my hands into other things. What that also does is it gives you another outlet. It gives you more well-roundedness and more holistic point of who you are. So if I'm only I work in macro social work. That's not for everyone. I love it. But I also want my hands in micro, like I want to work with students. I want to work with older adults. I want that. So just try to find a balance. And a balance to you is going to be different for you than it is for your professors, than it is for your peers. But really look at yourself and try to keep a pulse on who you are holistically. When we talk about resilience and endurance, it's not just physical. I mean, as a triathlete, I have to be physically fit and physically ready for it, but it's also mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's all of us. So just be good to you, give yourself grace, and just keep going. You guys are in a great university. So just trust in that you're getting the skills, and now just keep working on you, keep working on how you calm things down, how you spice things up, whatever it is you need at that moment. But just be good to you. Remember that first and foremost.
For the final two panelists, because there's a couple of questions from students, but I wanted, need to get your guidance and what you have all to offer, our students in a couple of sentences, if you can. Mr. Freeman and then Dr. Hinton-Polite, what can you share with our students before we go into Q&A?
I would just briefly say the benefit of planning how to pivot or knowing how to pivot. And by pivot, I mean the best illustration I know what it looks like is that those who are familiar with basketball, they say you have a pivot foot. And so that allows you to move, right? But yet not travel. And so I think oftentimes in life, when we're thrown difficulties, learning how to plan the pivot, learning how to move and adjust, and realizing what's open and what's not, what's a good direction to go and what's not a good direction to go. And I'm saying this because I kind of cheated. I kind of looked at one of the questions that one of the students asked. I'm sorry. But like,
that's okay. You angry
again. Because I feel like in life, it's our expectations of ourselves, and then it's what people project onto us. And I feel like in the setting in academia, when you're striving and you're going and you have dreams and you have all this emotion, there's a lot of emotion that goes with students when they sit in the class. There's a lot of emotion when they go to an office hour. There's a lot of hopes and there's a lot of dreams that's carried with them as they move. And so when you have an exchange with a professor or with someone who in your understanding is supposed to be helping you achieve that, and the feedback they give you is something that's crushing to your self expectation of who you are and what you can achieve, it makes you take a step back. And so you have to pivot. And I think also when we receive comments like that, I'm going to get right at it. When we receive comments like that, because I think, through I heard things like that. We have to seek deeper understanding. Well, what do you mean? Can you explain to me? Can you show me? Basically what we're asking, are you willing to teach me? Are you willing to mentor me? Are you willing to walk with me through the process? Do you have recommendations? Because I believe that comment has so much context to it. And so I want to address it and give you some really practical things you can ask. But what we can't do is just simply turn our backs and walk away, right? That's what we can't do. Because when we do that, that starts a cycle of self-doubt and not believing in our own potential and what we can achieve. So we have to address it and deal with it head on and seek to understand where the comment is coming from. Why is the feedback the way it is? And then is there a way that I can improve, or is there a way I can pivot, right? And so those are my thoughts on that.
And I'll briefly say, trust the process. Trust the process. Those were wise words that Dr. Fulmer, who was a professor in the social work department when I was an undergraduate, school. And I was the type of student that stressed and worried about everything. And Dr. Fulmer's response to me was always trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. And I did not get that until years later in life, that basically what he was saying is why don't stress myself out about things, is because everything does work out. Really, things all work out, they might not always work out the way that I think they should, or they may not look like I think they'll look, but they do work out. And they usually work out for the good, right? Or for the better, or for the best. And so, these are the times of your lives, and so enjoy them and don't stress and trust the process that everything is going to work out. Thanks.
So how about, there's a question that one of the freshmen are having about making mistakes. What are your experiences with that, making mistakes when you're faced with, challenges as a freshman?
I like what Ryan said about pivot. I think that goes a long way in terms of, if there's a misstep, is looking for the ways in which to pivot. How can I pivot, from this? How can I, shift so that I don't stay in that space, but that I move forward, right? And so that connects with that resilience in terms of when I make a mistake, how do I bounce back from that? How do I pivot from that? And I liked how he, with the instance of the professor, is to ask those specific questions. And I can also ask those specific questions of myself, right? What can I do different? How can I, I like to think that if someone has an opinion of me, that doesn't make it the gospel, right? I can take a look at it and take the parts of it that fit and look at what can I do about it, right? And then in the wise words of one of my friends, take the meat and leave the bones, right? So pivot. I think I would say pivot, and then also not only asking the questions of the other person, but also asking questions of myself.
How about any other of the panelists, hearing something, maybe in a negative fashion from a professor, and, you're taking it, what they're saying, and how would you handle those things? And it's going back to the question that Mr. Freeman, he shared that he cheated because he looked at some of the questions. And that was one of the questions, just hearing something that's so negative from someone else, and how would you, handle that and address it? Anybody else have any thoughts?
Well, I can give a quick true life story for that one. And it wasn't undergrad, but it was first year of grad school in social work. I was told that I should just drop out, that I'd never be a social worker because I did not participate well in field class. So it's one of those things of believing in who you are as well. But also what Dr. Polite was saying is you have a conversation, because please know that we are all, even faculty, staff, we all come with our own biases, our own histories. So what we see might not be what's really happening. As Kayla was saying, she just had a tough day for that one final or that one elevator speech, but we were given the opportunity to kind of move forward. So I know for me, it's learning, and I don't do this well, but I internalize things. It's learning how to not internalize what someone else says and say, this is who you are, and have that define who you are. But having the conversation, having the resiliency and the endurance to say, wait a minute, I want to do this. I can do this. This is, again, where it might not be with that professor or that instructor that you're talking to, but maybe a department person or someone else you trust. But having the conversations and not being afraid of having conversations. This is where I think our whole thing today was about relationships, honestly, is having relationships that you feel comfortable, that someone will tell you, okay, well, you didn't do enough work to earn that, or it's because of your placement, it's because of something else, or no, we need to really look at, is this who you are? And let's figure out how to better use your gifts and your skills that you've been given to help other people. So please know that it doesn't happen just on the undergrad. I got it in grad school that I was basically not appropriate for social work. And here I am several decades later, still in the profession and loving it and doing well. So I think that was my resilience and endurance of, okay, how do you handle that? But please know it does happen. It will happen in your place of work as well. You might have bosses that just don't communicate well to you. But please know that this is where your network and your support and your desire to continue in that really comes through and comes to fruition. So just trust on that.
So many of us have talked about spirituality and utilizing God as our foundation of how we continue, working and finding endurance and resilience. There was a question from one of the guests or participants seeing us today about how do we behave godly, on campus, and how can we maintain that stance in a campus environment.
What comes to mind for me is get with like-minded people, right? And so, and when I talk about God, I'm talking about personal for me, my faith tradition. I think it's important for each person to identify what theirs is, right? Because, yours may not be the same as mine. And so it's a personal thing, right? And then I would say get with like-minded people who believe as you believe in terms of God or spirituality. And there are, my understanding, there are lots of organizations that support different types of religious traditions or spiritual traditions on campus. And so getting with like-minded people. And then also too, that relationship with God or whatever you want to call it is really personal. And so a spiritual practice, I would say, is cultivate a spiritual practice that is something that you do, that is something that feeds your soul. So that's what I would say.
And I appreciate that. And thank you for that, because, it's hard sometimes for students, but, working with or hanging out or engaging with like-minded people. There's another question, because we talked about relationships and how we build those relationships. What advice would you give a student that's trying to build a relationship with a professor? And it's just, there is that sometimes that barrier, that sense of, oh, I don't even know how to address this person. What advice can you give them to openly, try to build a relationship with a professor, or how to do that?
I could speak to that briefly. I'm as a social worker, dignity and worth. And I say that because of a person, because I think a lot of times when you're engaging, there's this sense of this hierarchy, right? And so you feel less than. You don't feel worthy. You don't feel like you can engage. You don't feel like you can ask for help. But understanding what self-advocacy is, and understanding your worth, and understanding your value, and understanding your thought process and your learning preference and your learning style, and what it's going to take for you as an individual to be able to grab hold into the information that you need to be successful. And so a lot of that can be unpacked during office hours. And so, yes, there's this tension and there's this angst of like, can I go? Do I know the right thing to say? Do I know how to talk to them? Do I know how to communicate? I feel like there's a barrier. I'm speaking words, but I don't know if they're understanding what I'm saying, and vice versa. They're speaking to me, but I don't know what they're talking about, right? So I'm asking for help, and they're talking about chapter 1. Well, we're on chapter 5, and so I'm asking you for help. But what they're laying out is that there's a whole context to chapter 5, and so but understanding when you go into office hours, all of that matters, and all that conversation matters. So I think, when working with professors as a student, I have to start with myself and understand I have to understand what I don't know. And then when I have a conversation with them, through them instructing, teaching, guiding, a relationship organically will build. Because there's just something about professors that they know you care. then they care. It just kind of organically happens that way. So I would just encourage you in that light. I hope that helps. But really taking time to self-advocate and know what you don't know when you go and speak to professors.
Okay, anybody else? I mean, we are at time. And office hours, yes, are important, and you yourself, self-advocating for what you need. But we appreciate and thank everyone on this panel for sharing a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your knowledge and just your skills and just your ideas to bestow onto our students and faculty and staff just a little bit more about how to be resilient, how to endure, how to support our students, because they are our future. They're going to be taking our places soon. But I do appreciate everybody on this panel that participated. I appreciate everybody that came to hear us just talk about adjusting to change. It is my hope that you will have a beautiful rest of the weekend or week. The weekend is coming soon, but thank you for coming. I appreciate everyone that's in attendance today. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Berta. Thank you to the panelists. We really, really appreciate your time. That was awesome. And I know that our students have benefited a lot from hearing you. And if they have any questions, we will communicate. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, students, for logging in. We greatly appreciate. Thank you, Berta, for wonderful, wonderful job.